She thought she was safe, standing in front of her own home in her own neighborhood. But safety vanished the moment strangers in fake uniforms appeared, demanding control they had no right to claim. Within seconds, a peaceful evening turned into a nightmare of violence, fear, and humiliation. What happened that night wasn't just an attack. It was a reminder of how fragile dignity and justice can be when racism hides behind authority. And the response that followed? It would shock everyone who thought silence was the only option. Marcus and his wife, Alicia, had worked hard to build a life they were proud of. He was a decorated Navy SEAL, respected for his service, while she poured her heart into teaching at the local school. Their neighborhood was supposed to be a place of peace, the kind of place where children rode bikes freely and families waved across driveways. To them, it wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of stability, of finally having a place to breathe. But underneath the trimmed lawns and polished mailboxes, tension often simmered. Unspoken rules seemed to follow them more closely than their white neighbors. Eyes lingered a little too long when Marcus jogged through the streets. Notes about neighborhood standards found their way to their door more often than seemed normal. Still, they brushed it off, determined not to let whispers steal the joy of their home. That night, Alicia stepped outside for what should have been a simple moment. Locking the car, checking the mailbox. But ordinary moments have a way of becoming extraordinary when hate decides to show its face. She didn't see the danger at first, but it was already watching her, waiting for the right moment to strike. Alicia barely had time to notice the figures approaching. At first glance, they looked official dark uniforms, badges glinting under the streetlight, the kind of appearance meant to command obedience. But something was off. Their cars weren't marked. Their behavior didn't match the calm assurance of trained officers. Instead, it was aggression, sharp, invasive, the kind that came from entitlement, not authority. They called themselves HOA security, but the HOA had no security force. This was a lie designed to intimidate. Their voices were sharp, laced with a tone that made her skin crawl. They demanded answers she didn't know, questioned why she was outside her own home, why she belonged there at all. It wasn't just a confrontation. It was an accusation, wrapped in false authority, fueled by prejudice. Alicia tried to remain calm, clutching her keys, her voice steady even as her heart pounded. She had lived this reality before, the constant need to prove, to explain, to survive in spaces that should have been safe. But the men weren't looking for answers. They were looking for control. And when intimidation didn't break her, violence took its place. One of them shoved her against the car, the metal slamming against her back. The sound echoed across the quiet street, shattering the illusion of peace. Neighbors peeked through curtains, but no one opened a door. Her cries cut through the night, but silence from the houses told its own story. Fear, or worse, indifference, kept them still. She struggled, fighting to break free, but every movement was met with more force. A fist connected with her ribs, knocking the air from her lungs. She stumbled, vision blurring, yet refused to collapse. They wanted her to feel powerless, to remind her that in their eyes, she didn't belong. Not in this neighborhood, not in this life she and Marcus had built. And then the worst thought struck her. Marcus wasn't home yet. The man trained for battle, the one who had faced war zones, wasn't here to stop this ambush. For the first time that night, a wave of dread heavier than pain washed over her, because she realized she was truly alone. But she wasn't. At the end of the street, headlights appeared. A car slowing down, turning into the driveway. The familiar engine, the tires crunching against gravel. Relief surged through her battered body, but so did fear. Because if they dared to attack her, what would they do when Marcus stepped out of that car? The night was no longer about intimidation. It was about survival. And the men who thought they could control her were about to realize they had picked the wrong family. The car door slammed shut and Marcus stepped out, still in casual clothes, but carrying the presence of a man who had spent years in war zones. He froze at the sight before him. His wife pinned against their car, her face bruised, her breath ragged. The men in fake uniforms didn't even flinch. They turned, smirking, as if daring him to act. Marcus's blood boiled. He had faced enemies armed with weapons of war, but nothing compared to the rage of seeing his wife attacked on the doorstep of their own home. The men barked orders, threatening him, trying to use their false badges as shields. But Marcus knew exactly what they were: cowards hiding behind costumes. When one of them raised a fist to strike Alicia again, Marcus moved. Years of training surged forward like instinct. His body became a weapon, swift, precise, unstoppable. In seconds, the first man was on the ground, gasping for air after a blow that left him stunned. The second tried to rush him, but Marcus countered with brutal efficiency, dropping him with a strike that echoed through the night. The sound of fists connecting, bodies hitting pavement, shattered the silence that the neighbors had clung to. Curtains shifted, phones began to record, but no one intervened. It was violence, but it was also justice. For every blow Alicia had suffered, Marcus answered with unrelenting force. And yet, even as the men lay groaning, the victory wasn't sweet. The truth was heavier. This never should have happened. No one should have to defend their family from hate dressed up as authority. As Marcus stood over the defeated attackers, chest heaving, his wife trembling beside him, one haunting question lingered in the air. Would justice finally follow this night, or would the system find a way to turn it against them? When the police finally arrived, it wasn't the attackers who were questioned first. It was Marcus. Even with two men lying on the pavement, their fake badges scattered, suspicion still turned toward him. Alicia, bruised and shaken, stood close by, her voice trembling as she explained what had happened. It took neighbors stepping forward, shaky phone footage, and undeniable evidence before the truth was acknowledged. The men were taken away, but the damage couldn't be undone. Alicia carried more than bruises. She carried the weight of knowing her safety could be stripped away in seconds. Marcus, though victorious in defending her, felt the bitter sting of reality. Service to his country hadn't shielded him from the same racial prejudice that stalked every black family trying to live in peace. Their home, once a sanctuary, now bore the shadows of fear. Yet it also carried a lesson, a reminder of resilience, of refusing to be silent when hate crosses the line. This was not just about one couple in one neighborhood. It was about a system where fake authority can thrive because real authority so often looks away. And that's where the story reaches beyond them. How many more families must endure the terror of being targeted for the color of their skin? How many more nights must be shattered before accountability outweighs indifference? The footage of that night spread online, sparking outrage, but outrage alone is not enough. Change begins with facing these truths, refusing to dismiss them as isolated incidents, and asking the hardest question of all. If it happened here, in a quiet suburban street, where else is it happening right now? Because the real fight isn't just about what Marcus did in that driveway. It's about what all of us are willing to do next.